I just really, not only encourage it, but demand them if I'm working with them, that you have to do this. You have to do this, because no one wants to be on the sideline with a torn Achilles or a soleus problem, which is really prevalent with endurance athletes. That's what typically pulls. And I said, well, you're not doing your exercise in your lower leg. So it becomes, comes around to bite them. And as you were talking about, usually people are reactive because they've got an injury and they should be addressing it beforehand.
Welcome to the Spartan Endurance Series on Spartan Up Podcast with host Johnny Waite.
Hey everybody, we've got another great episode with Dave Scott today, 6-time Ironman World Champion. And Dave talks to us about strength and nutrition and how his views have evolved over his career and his life to what he has now found the best formula for endurance athletes.
This episode of Spartan Up is brought to you by Brightside. Dealing with anxiety or depression can be paralyzing, but you should know you are not broken and you're not alone. And when you want help, Brightside is there for you. Take a free mental health assessment and get up to $100 credit on your first month of treatment at brightside.com/Spartan. That's brightside.com/Spartan.
Hey everyone, I am back with Dave Scott, 6-time Ironman World Champion, and he was just known as the man when he was dominating the Ironman scene. What I really appreciate about our initial conversation is Dave's still contributing hugely in the world of endurance sports. He runs camps and programs, and we talked a lot about mobility, and really, really important. It's funny, Dave, the ways we discover our need for mobility. I've taken up disc golf in a surprisingly big way the last year and a half, and all of a sudden I'm finding enormous shoulder mobility problems because it's a new movement. I didn't do the baseline work to get there. So anyone who missed our previous conversation, go back and listen to everything Dave said about stretching and mobility and how important that is wherever you're at in your career. But what I want to get into now, Dave, you talked about strength, and it was mobility, strength, and stretching. But we didn't really dive in on the strength. And I'm going to start by asking you, to an endurance athlete, what is strength? What is the definition of strength, and why is it important to the endurance athlete?
I always use the sort of parallel in describing them when they're racing. And everyone's race age is on their calf. And someone goes by them on the bike. And all of a sudden they say, oh, I'm 47. There's another 47-year-old. I'm going to go with them. And they might last for X amount of time. They start to load up and they realize, boy, that person, male or female, is faster. I gotta go back to my tempo. So when I look at that, I said, do all of you have kind of that second gear? Can you notch it up? Can you develop more muscle tension? And per your question, Johnny, when we develop more muscle tension, I'll describe this a little bit more. The endurance athletes innervate this kind of spectrum of slow twitch with their slow twitch muscle fibers, which they're using all the time, to the next one, which are called the fast twitch 2A fibers. And I don't want to be too technical, but those fast twitch 2A have about 5 times the contractile force of the slow twitch. They can blow through glycogen real fast. So a lot of athletes that don't train them all of a sudden say, their mind says, I'm going to catch that guy, and then they're completely slogged and they can't finish whatever they're doing. And if they're doing a triathlon, their run's going to be impaired by it. So activating those slow twitch 2A, and I also activate the faster ones called the 2X, and there's the 2B on the end. The 2B, or you look at a high jumper or a shot putter where it's very explosive. I actually do the whole spectrum, and there's an overlap. And I mean, as you know, we can do exercise that develop muscle tension. And predominantly with the endurance athletes, the mantra is, I'm just going to go really lightweight. I'm going to go real lightweight, and I'm going to do 1,000,000 reps. And they never take it to, and I use this terminology with them all the time, you got to take it to hardy fatigue. Near muscular failure, but hardy fatigue. And that produces this real favorable protein. We chatted about this a minute ago, and it helps your mitochondria. It's called a myokine, myokine. And so we get this big influx of these myokines, which is good for your heart and your liver and your kidney, your brain. And it also is going to make them go faster. So when I talk to endurance athletes, I always tell them that most of them are better off and they need about a 6 to 12 week window so their connective tissues and tendons adapt to the load, that they go lighter weight to begin with, but then they add heavier weight and keep that rep range between about 8 to 15 reps. And again, at the tail end of that, they're going to this hardy fatigue. So they're saying, gee, I may be able to do 1 or 2, but I got to maintain good form. I'm going to stop. That's a good point to stop. Don't do 15 and recite poetry while you're doing it. You got to be, you got to be slogging yourself.
Yeah.
So, I see endurance runners all the time. They'll grab 2-pound dumbbells and they stand in front of the mirror and they're kind of mimicking the running action like this. And I say, well, you're better off going home and playing cards. What a waste of time. So there's 2 ways you can do it. You can use lighter weight. You have to bring up the speed of movement. So the speed of movement with lighter weight does work, but I think there should be a mix of where you're using heavier weight in the range that I just talked about. Then you're going to develop the strength. And during the season, I try to do more power-oriented, faster movement exercise where we actually drop the weight from their strength levels and they're doing more explosive movement. And I've always felt, and I've seen the results with the triathletes, all ages, that the muscle integrity is better, their ability to recover is a lot better. The 2A fibers are working magnificently because they can work through an Ironman if you train them, or they can completely fall apart. Early on the bike or on the swim, if you go out really hard in the first 800 meters and you're just taxing yourself, you're going to have to slow down. And I've seen this with the pros that are overzealous, trying to catch the lead pack, and they just don't have it. And I've always, people think I have a crystal ball, like who's going to win Hawaii? Why aren't they running fast? Why aren't they doing this and that? And I said, I don't know. But what I do recognize is that the athletes in this generation are phenomenal, men and women, but yet they're not able to run fast at the Ironman distance. At the half distance, the 70.3, they're fast, but they've completely fall apart. Even Jan Frodeno, who's a gold medalist in the Olympics, he won the 70.3 World Championships. He's won Ironman. He's the Ironman world record holder in Kona, which is the course. People want to excel on that one. It's very demanding. But yet you look at his half marathon times, it is in the 70.3 races, half of the Ironman distance, they're phenomenally fast. But when the fatigue sets in at the Ironman, his marathon on the end really is shockingly slow for his ability. He's not even running at his aerobic pace because he's fatigued. And I've seen this with many athletes. They have the gift, and I always want to ask them, are you doing your strength training program throughout the whole year? And where a lot of the athletes really lose it is they do it seasonally. The endurance athletes do it during the off season. It's cold. I'm going to do it now. But when the season starts, I'm going to go longer, and they get weaker and weaker and weaker. And a lot of them have injuries. And so with Ironman having a qualification to get to their particular races, a lot of the athletes are decimated come October when they really want to shine. And I just feel like, wow, are they neglecting the strength part, which is really paramount to their performance?
So a little bit like I did with the mobility, where we talked about 3 levels. Somebody who's going to take it really seriously, get coaching, come to a camp. Somebody who's going to seek out the detailed information on your website. For the person who isn't at either of those levels yet, but they're buying into this, they're saying, hey, wow, I haven't really thought about strength training. What's a basic strength training, not a full program, but if you were to say, this is what I mean when I talk about strength training, what would that be?
I think you can minimize it. People don't want to spend a lot of time. The endurance athletes, they kind of poo-poo it and they say, I just want to get this done. You can do a 5 to 8 different exercises, move quickly through those in sort of a circuit fashion, repeat it over again. So you're doing it 2 rounds or possibly 3, and you can get it done between. I have programs between 20 to 24 minutes. So I think when people have a myriad of exercise and they think, gee, I got to spend 90 minutes in the gym, they give up too soon. So when I look at the strength exercises, I want to hit those areas that I talked about. So I want to make sure that I'm strengthening my core, which people don't even know what the core is. It's really 29 muscles on the anterior side and the posterior side. So when people kind of look at their ribs and they go down through their pelvis to their mid quad, and then they flip themselves over, their hamstrings all the way up to their glutes, their low back and mid back, that if you have a strong core, and certainly in your industry, people know this well, then you can generate the greatest power out of all the other muscles. So I like to have 2 of those 6 or 8 exercises that they're doing that are really core related. And And there's lots of different movements where they're very dynamic. But I was using this example yesterday because I did a video, and I said, well, I've got people doing a plank, and I see this all the time with endurance athletes. They're doing a plank and they're just sitting there holding that position and grunting it out, and they've got bad body position, but there's no movement. And so if you just take a plank and you do a push-up walk-up on it, you do a side step, you do upward downward dog, you extend your leg back and up a little bit, all of a sudden, just with that movement, you get that vibration. Your whole body is attacked, and your core, it has to work on both sides, anterior and posterior. And that's just one example, but that's one exercise, and I went through that pretty quickly, where there's 4 or 5 different permutations off a regular plank where it's dynamic, there's movement. Don't just sit there. Exercise is movement.
It's funny. I believe, I may be wrong. I believe it was Mike Trout, the baseball player, about 10 years ago, who said, "I'm just focusing everything on my core from now on." He said, all this wrist work and everything else. He said, if my core's strong, everything's going to rotate through, and all the power is going to come from that. And like really, really bought into that. So the other thing that you talked a little bit about before too is the idea that, endurance athletes don't always age well because they're not building up that like you say, that they end up being a skeleton inside skin. So what's the importance to strength training as far as your post career?
Well, it's huge for me because I've been post career for quite a while, Johnny. But again, you're looking at someone who's maybe 45 and they say, "Oh, I want to race. I love this sport. It's really for me," and they want to do it till they're 85. And we have 85-year-olds that are racing. And that's kind of an extreme example. But when I kind of look at that strength spectrum, if you're going to give up an activity during your week, you give up a swim or a bike or a run, but you include the mobility, stretching, and strength as a key component. You never let go of that at all. And I always use this example. If you look at someone who's 80 years old and they're running, and you can see this in 70-year-olds and 60-year-olds and 50-year-olds, and even all the way down to 40, they become forward flexed. Their neck is flexed, their eyes are looking down, they're bent over at the waist. And then you also hear this kind of slapping when they land each time. They not only are forward flex, and that's lack of range of motion, particularly in the areas I talked about, but it's also strength. And people say, "Gee, I just don't have the pop." All the studies will show that a lot of the great athletes lose that ability to generate strength out of their lower legs. So their gastroc and their soleus and their Achilles and all their feet muscles become dormant. So people start walking flat-footed. And you see an 80-year-old, they run flat-footed. That's very, very common. Eyes are down. But I see it in even younger athletes, or they're trying to run fast and their arms are winged back. So they're kind of cocking them back like that, like this, like a chicken, and their neck is forward flexed. And I said, well, it's so inefficient. And I see this with a lot of the pros, more men than women, that run that way. And they're trying to fight the lack of strength that they have to stay upright and to keep their core activated. So I think what you mentioned about having a strong core and keep working on that with different exercise, so you're not just doing the same thing over and over again throughout a 12-month cycle. You've got to basically trick the muscles a little bit. You change the workload a little bit. You do some of it eccentrically, and that eccentric load, you can generate huge amount of strength. And a lot of the endurance athletes, anytime they do anything eccentric, they have no idea. A simple example, which I do it myself, but I wouldn't do this with people when we're talking about a short program. If you're doing bench press and you're pushing the weight up, the muscles are shortening, but then you go down slowly, coming down slowly, and that's eccentric load, where the muscle is actually lengthening, and you feel that all the way through your triceps and your pecs and your lats, and so I think the eccentric load is part of the program as well.
It's amazing, something that I heard you say I wanted to go back to, when somebody thinks about triathlon and they think bike, swim, run, and when you just said, hey, if you have to cut one thing out that week because you run out of time, cut out a bike, a swim, or a run. Keep the strength in, keep the mobility in. So clearly it's that important to you.
It's hugely important, and I saw this early on, as I mentioned, when I was in high school and college, and I played water polo and I swam. I just said, I don't seem to have the genetic gift with good body position in swimming. I don't have a great flutter kick on the back end. And certainly in water polo, strength was absolutely paramount. I said, I'm going to be stronger than that guy who's 20 pounds heavier than me. And I'm going to wear him out, not only with the endurance that I have, but I'm going to be stronger. And that's it's gone through my whole career. And so when I have these athletes, not to be redundant, I just really, not only encourage it, but demand them, if I'm working with them, that you have to do this. You have to do this, because no one wants to be on the sideline with a torn Achilles or a soleus problem, which is really prevalent with endurance athletes. That's what typically pulls. And I said, well, you're not doing your exercise in your lower leg. So it becomes, it comes around to bite them. And as you were talking about, usually people are reactive because they've got an injury and they should be addressing it beforehand.
Exactly. We talked about that in the mobility standpoint, that, once you've had a tear, you think, oh, I'm going to stretch from now on. and so much better to not have the tear in the first place. My wife actually tore Achilles. I'll brag about her. She's 48 and took up skateboarding, but didn't learn the mobility first. So that'll be fixed this summer. Hey, Dave, I really, really appreciate you taking the time. And I just want to put in one other plug for you. I know that a lot of our listeners and watchers are probably not quite our age, but getting there. And you, in your 40s, went back down and had an incredible Ironman performance. So, the fact that this is this is tried and true. What we're talking about. You're not just a guy who had a great career in his 20s. I mean, you dominated for a long time. So this is worth listening to.
Well, thank you, Johnny. I mean, that's, I wanted to hang on, and I did have kind of a hiatus when I had my two boys, and I had an injury, and then I was 35, and I had kind of 5 years where I waffled, and I came back at 40, and it doesn't bite me today. There's a lot of history behind that way back when I was 40, but I was second that year, and then I said, well, I want to keep going. And it was kind of novel then, because you wouldn't see a 40-year-old. Now there's a lot of them, and I think, lay down the mat in all different sports. I said, you're 40 or 40 plus, keep going. But do the right things, eat well and make sure you're doing all the stuff that we've been talking about. So I came back when I was 42. I actually dropped a weight on my foot between those 2 years, 94 and 96. So 95 I couldn't race, and 96 I said, I'm fitter now. I'm 42. Quietly I said, I think I can win the Ironman, but I didn't have. I had a really poor swim. I kind of overtrained on the bike, but I had the second fastest run of the day. So I came off 26th and ran up to 5th. So I always think that was kind of my savior of my whatever career I had. But I think the only reason I was able to come off the bike and run well is that I was a strong guy.
Hey, I sounded like I was wrapping up there a minute ago, but I remembered something I wanted you to talk a little bit about. And we had touched on diet and your evolving approach to nutrition. So take a couple of minutes and walk me through what your current philosophy is and what brought you to it.
Well, my current philosophy, and people will challenge me on this, and I like talking to a room of people that said, "Hey, Dave, you told us to eat carbohydrates," and I did. And we know carbohydrates work, and they break down to glucose. We use glucose in our brain, and our organs and muscles use glucose. But now I'm completely opposite of that. And I was aware of the science. I have a background in exercise physiology, and I always thought, I'm a smart guy, or hardly smart at all. And I knew about low carb, high fat, and also nutritional ketosis. So I started exploring that more, and I said, wow, how could I have overlooked this when I was actually an athlete? And my response is I would have been a better athlete if I had been on this diet. So for really the last kind of 6 to 7 years, I've dramatically shifted my diet. I talk about it all the time. It's at my camps. I write about it. I do videos on this. And it's shifting away from a carbohydrate-dominated diet to healthy fats. And you still need to have protein. And I think when people look at low carb, high fat, or keto, they think, well, I got to have carbohydrates. It's not void of carbohydrates. You're just not eating a bagel and pancakes. Yeah. You're eating, leafy greens, as one example. I have a chart, and I'd be glad to share it with you. It's called Superfoods, and I've just put it together. So I said, these are your choices. And I always ask people, I said, how many of you are actually eating these foods? X number every 2 weeks, and it has the healthy fat list as well. But the first change that people really need to make if they think, gee, I've gained weight, I don't feel good, I've seemingly, got sore joints, I have the systemic inflammation. And we think of inflammation as, all the itis, is arthritis and bursitis and peritonitis and on and on and on. But we have systemic inflammation as well, which affects our blood, which affects our organs, and it really affects our recovery and aging. So I'm kind of adamant about shifting that over. And one of the things that people can do right off the bat before they knock out carbohydrates is look at their pantry and get rid of all the packaged foods, because a lot of them have the clear oils that are now hard. Some are hydrogenated, so those are hardened oils, but the omega-6 polyunsaturated fats are the bad ones, and the corn and cottonseed and canola oil, people think, well, that's a really healthy one, and soy and safflower and sunflower are kind of in that. That list grows a little bit more, but people need to get rid of those and look at their packaged foods. They all contain it. And then they start weaning themselves from the really, really refined carbohydrates. And the first thing is really what we drink. And I tell people, don't drink orange juice. And they say, don't drink orange. I say, yeah, don't drink orange juice, apple juice, grape juice. Yeah. Well, all the fluid replacement drinks that all the endurance athletes live on, whether it's Gatorade and a myriad of different stuff. But now there's simplified carbohydrates. There's gummy bears and waffles and everything else when you're training. I said, you got to get rid of those. So big change, and a good change.
So again, another great rabbit hole people can go down and get tons of information. It sounds like the simplest version, though, is if you want to do it right, eat natural foods, eat foods in their normal state, right? If you're eating vegetables and you're not eating anything processed, getting rid of the pastas and the breads and everything else, you're going to keep the good carbohydrates, lose the bad ones, and then from a protein standpoint, I believe that I read that that at one point you eschewed meat, but now you're a chicken and fish guy. Is that correct?
I'm a chicken, fish, and beef guy. So yeah, in a number of years that I was able to win Ironman, and I fiddled with all that. I was on a macrobiotic diet for a while. I was on a vegan diet for a short period, lacto-ovo, or I was taking eggs and milk. But I was surviving on really refined carbohydrates. I would eat a tremendous amount, and I had huge vacillations in my training. Some days I was lethargic, I was dead, I couldn't get going, and I'd just fall off the map. But now, no, I eat meat. I eat grass-fed beef, which has it's called conjugated linoleic acid, CLA, and it's very, 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 very healthy. Converts omega-3s. Cold water fish is a real staple of mine. I think where people go, wrong is that you cannot, and you just said it, Johnny, you cannot have the pastas and the starchy foods. And so people think, oh, the grains are really healthy, but they, by themselves or in big volume, they have a huge glycemic load. And so you elevate insulin. When insulin's elevated for a long period of time, trying to move that blood sugar somewhere, it has to go through your liver, but it's going to the other organs. Your body's under this inflammatory state. And you really want to try to either shift the diet so that you're burning fat. So you're burning free fatty acids or these liver-based fats called ketone bodies if you're in nutritional ketosis. And that is much healthier for your physiology. And this is a long discussion I won't go into, but I'm just crazy over it. I don't try to, strangle people with it. I usually look at their diet and just say, hey, it's in some ways it's like an alcoholic. If you keep eating, and I pick on bagels all the time because I used to eat a lot of them. If you eat 2 or 3 bagels a day and you put peanut butter on it, which is a legume, well, that's not great in itself. And I said, you just have to stop. You have to stop and find an alternative food. So there's some where, athletes, non-athletes, people that are just coming back will say, well, I can eat as many fruits and vegetables as I can. No, you can't. You can't eat the starchy ones. You can't eat an excessive amount of fruit. I hand out this part of the talks I give are on the high levels of fructose that are in fruits, and I'll just give you the two extremes. Everyone thinks agave is agave nectar, and you see it in shakes and all sorts of health food. It's the worst one. It has the highest level of fructose. You look at the other end of the spectrum, and lime or lemon are at the bottom. So there's fruits that you have to eat in really moderation. or you're going to drive up that blood glucose and also your insulin levels.
So you give me a great segue, actually, because like you said, there's a ton of information, and I can tell that if you built up the momentum, we could turn this into an entire lecture on it, which would be fantastic. But because you have all this information, I want people to know where they can find you, where they can get that, where they can find out about your camps. So direct me to your website and your socials. Where should people find you?
Yeah, I'm kind of, I'm all over social. I think the easiest way I always tell people, you can easily, you just Google me. I have a newsletter that's free, and they can come to my website, and Dave Scott Incorporated, and they can come to my website and just download the newsletter. And it comes out twice a month, and I have nutrition information. I have strength stuff. I embed videos as well. I have a YouTube channel. So I'm fairly easy to find.
Dave Scott Incorporated will take them to your website, and once they're on your website, that'll take them everywhere else.
Yeah, exactly, John. Yeah, people have asked over the years, and I said, well, I know there was a fellow named Dave Scott. There was an astronaut. I did receive years ago there's a David Scott who was an astronaut, and I've got a couple of these pictures of this astronaut from little kids, and they said, could you sign this? I've really followed your career. And I said,
you can't break their heart. You sign them and tell them to drink some Tang.
Yeah. Well, I didn't want to send a picture back and wearing my little swim briefs. I'd probably be arrested. So I just said, well, that's the other guy. Anyway,
hey, Dave,
I'll say I'm easy to find. But
that's awesome. Thank you so. I was going to say thank you so much. I really, really appreciate your time. I'm going to put a lot of this to use right away. Like I say, I'm finding that I'm taking up new sports in my 50s, and each one of them brings another tweak that I have to do. So I'm going to follow your mantra. It's strength, mobility, stretching, and I'm going to look at my diet because I hear some good stuff in there that I think I could put to use right away. So I'm sure everyone listening will as well.
Thank you, Johnny. Pleasure chatting with you. It's great to be with a different audience. I've done a lot of podcasts. A lot of them are endurance oriented, but I do a lot of around the health. So I appreciate the time.
Cool. Thank you.
This episode of Spartan Up is brought to you by Brightside. Dealing with anxiety or depression can be paralyzing, but you should know you are not broken and you're not alone. And when you want help, Brightside is there for you. Take a free mental health assessment and get up to $100 credit on your first month of treatment at brightside.com/Spartan. That's brightside.com/Spartan. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Endurance Series on Spartan Up Podcast. Spartan Up is your partner in resilience for mind, body, and spirit. We're here 3 days every week. Tuesdays, you can find Joe DeSena, founder and CEO of Spartan, interviewing biohackers, business leaders, authors, and athletes. Thursdays and Saturdays, catch episodes from our DECA, Endurance, Trail, Combat, and LaRuta series. Do you know someone who needs a little nudge? Maybe they could use some motivation, tactics to be stronger, healthier, happier, more successful. Tell them about our show. And if you're watching on YouTube, leave us a comment. We want to know who's watching and who's listening. Thanks. See you next time.